Good afternoon. Welcome to the September 12, 2023 regularly scheduled City Commission meeting for the City of Henderson. If you would, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can we have a call for attendance, please?
Commissioner Pruitt,
Here.
Commissioner Witt, absent.
Go ahead.
Osborne.
Yep.
Commissioner Vowles.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
Mayor Staten.
Here. Thank you. We are joined this afternoon by a gentleman named Mark Franklin. Mark, are you on Zoom with us?
I am, thank you, I'm here.
All right. I am, yes. If you wouldn't mind to take it away and go over this, the revenue bonds presentation with us, please, sir.
Okay, good afternoon, my name is Mark Franklin, I'm with Dinsmore and Scholl, I serve as bond counsel for the city. I was asked to come this afternoon and just make a quick presentation about an ordinance that will be presented to the city at an upcoming meeting regarding a new series of revenue bonds that will be issued for the benefit of HWU. The city in the past, most recent years, has been in the habit of issuing general obligation bonds for the benefit of both the city's needs of the general fund and also for the purposes of HWU. So system improvements for the water and the water system have been financed with bonds backed by the taxing power of the city and the general fund, and those bond proceeds have been, you could say, sort of lent internally by the city to the water system. The water system then making payments internally at the city to make debt service payments on the general fund. We have done that because the general fund and the taxing power of the city presents the lowest cost of borrowing for the city for improvements. Over time, though, of course, the amount of general obligation bonds outstanding for the city has increased, and we've kind of reached a point where it's probably wise to start to finance some improvements to the water system using revenue bonds, which is another ordinary and common way to finance improvements to enterprise-based systems. When I say enterprise, I mean activities of governmental units that charge fees and charges in exchange for services. So that's what the water system is. They have fees they assess and charge in exchange for water and other services. So there, in order to secure the new bond issue, we have prepared a general bond ordinance that will govern all revenue debt of the system. It will make the issuance of subsequent, the new and subsequent series of revenue debt and bonds much simpler to do. Most of the detail will be contained within the general bond ordinance, and subsequent approvals can be by much shorter series ordinances. The general bond resolution contains a number of covenants which are common in all revenue bond financings. Investors, tend to see revenue bonds as, I don't want to say riskier investments, but it is a different beast by nature than tax-backed financings, and so the city in the bond ordinance will make promises to investors to do certain things, and that includes adopting an annual budget for the water system, levying adequate rates and charges, and then increasing rates and charges or adjusting rates and charges on an ongoing basis sufficient to do three things. The first thing to do would be to pay the ongoing expenses of operating the water system. Then two, to make payments on all debt payments owed to the water system. And third is to also provide an adequate cushion of additional revenues or monies available for other needs. And so, in other words, investors want to ensure they're not any different than anyone else. They want to ensure that the water system has adequate money to pay its operating expenses, its debts, and have a little money left over, if you want to put it that way. And so the basic bond ordinance will contain covenants in that respect, and the covenants will be set as low as possible, but still as high as needed in order to get favorable interest rates on the bonds. And so that's those, and it'll also contain, covenants necessary to issue additional debt. And those tests will be very similar. It will say in order to incur additional revenue, that the city will have to demonstrate that the existing revenues of the water system are sufficient to pay ongoing operating expenses, the debt service of existing debt, and the debt service of the future indebtedness to be incurred, plus a sufficient cushion, if you will. And those the amount of the cushion will be set forth in the basic bond ordinance. So all this is standard provisions to be contained in ordinances, but as is usual, when you let a bond council get a hold of something, the ordinance will be fairly long. So when you see it, I thought it would be good to give you a little heads up and kind of go over really what the key terms of it are ahead of time, so that you'll have an idea of what to look for when you see the document in the final draft. But that's all I have to say. Unless there are questions to be asked by any of the commissioners, I'd be happy to answer those.
Mark, this is Dawn. One of the things that we talked about when we were with Bart and interview board was, I think you called it the debt ratio that's looked at every year. Can you kind of explain how that will happen each year on these bonds?
Yes, you're talking about the debt service coverage ratio?
Yes.
Yes. So, and also I think in the audience, Chip Sutherland's actually there in person with you. He may have, as your financial advisor, he may have additional comments to make.
Chip hasn't made it in yet.
Okay, yeah, the debt service coverage ratio will require the system to calculate the net revenues of the system. So that will be revenues generated by the rates and charges. You will back out operating expenses and make adjustments for non-cash items like depreciation, things that are not actual expenditures made. And then you will compare that to the actual debt service due in that year and see what the difference is. So you'll see what kind of cushion you have from the amount of revenue you've raised from the system, pay your expenses, and what's left over to make debt service charges or to pay debt service. And we tend to see that as a ratio. And so it's usually expressed as your coverage is, your required coverage may be 1.2. In other words, your net revenue adjusted for non-cash items over your debt service coverage may have to be 1.2. Actual debt service coverage may be, you may achieve a 1.7 or a 2.5. You may have lots of cushion, lots of excess revenue available, but there will be a minimum standard imposed, most likely 1.2 for the system. And that gives investors adequate assurance that the system is being operated to produce sufficient revenues to support debt service.
Now, when you do that analysis, will that be through, will we use the independent audit for that, or where will those numbers come from?
It's a great question. So when you issue sell bonds to the public, the city has always and will continue to execute a certificate where you will agree to provide certain information to investors every year by a certain deadline. And so that usually includes a number of items. That it's the audited financial statements of the city. In this case, the system, the water system, will be included. In addition to key operating data, like maybe your 10 largest customers and other items like that. I suspect that your auditor will look at the general bond ordinance and he will calculate that coverage amount every year. And then when those, and probably included in your audit report, when it goes to investors, they will be able to see that. And that will most also likely be an additional, it will be spelled out as a calculation that will be required to be provided to investors every year so that they can see where you are on your coverage. And that information is posted on a website that's free and available to the public. Anyone literally around the world, but particularly in America, who's eligible to buy your bonds can get on and look and make an investment decision whether to buy your bonds or whether to sell them or whether to hold them, right? That's what the information is for. And is used for every day. So you've in fact, the information regarding the city is available today on the website. Any of you can get on and look today, or any of your citizens could as well.
And so if we aren't able to, if the audited financials don't show the debt service ratio that we need, it would be at that point that HW would need to come back to the city commission about raising revenue or raising rates. Is that correct?
Right, the requirement to maintain adequate rates and charges will be a financial covenant within the general, or the general bond ordinance. You will be required to satisfy that covenant to avoid being in default under the ordinance with respect to your bonds. And so I would recommend as your bond counsel that you actively manage that coverage requirement. That means the system and its employees and managers will need to keep track of that year to year, month to month, and make sure that the rates and charges they impose and levy on customers and ratepayers are sufficient. And if they think, that there's a chance they may not be, they would have a situation where they would want to bring that to the commission's attention well in advance, so that can be dealt with ahead of time. If you ever got in a situation where those rates and charges would fall below the required levels, that would constitute the then of default for any debt outstanding under that basic bond ordinance, and that would permit potentially bondholders to bring a claim and try to either accelerate the debt or to ask maybe a receiver to be appointed to operate the system on their behalf. Those are not extreme remedies. Those are very typical remedies for any revenue system, not just in Kentucky, but across the country. So water districts, anyone who's doing revenue-based debt, that's basically the remedies they have. But it requires proactive management, not just reactive management, if you want to put it that way.
And the reason that I asked that you and Chip be here today, and Chip's here now, was that in my tenure with the city, we haven't done revenue bonds. So this is a little different than what we've done in the past. And I just wanted to make sure that you all understood well in advance before first read the difference between the GO bonds that we do each year and the revenue bonds. And that's why Chip and Mark are here, kind of to make sure that if you all have any questions, you all think of other questions before first read. I think first read, because of some insurance, we're waiting on some insurance.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be October 17th. But this gives you all some time to digest this information. And this is Chip Sutherland with Baird.
Yep. And this is what I get for being a good boy and coming in person. I did every red light, every construction thing on the way. So thanks for letting me come up here and address. I want to pick up on what you're saying there,
Sure.
Don. So revenue debt is what is ordinarily done in organizations like your all's that own water and sewer system. That's ordinary. What has been done in the past has been extraordinary in a good way. So the city, because of the position it was in and the water sewer company's funding needs, the city was able to issue debt on its behalf in general obligation debt. But at a certain point, you can't do that forever. And so this is a situation where we're issuing general revenue bonds for this. And, Mark went over with you all the provisions that would be ordinary in that. So happy to answer any questions you guys have on it. The bond insurance that you're talking about, Don, so one of the things that your credit rating as a city is very high, as we've talked about publicly in the past, and it's a good thing. We expect a similarly strong rating from the water and sewer system. Nonetheless, water and sewer revenue bonds can benefit from bond insurance, and the bond insurance basically steps in if there's an issue from the bond investor's perspective. The bond insurer will step in and make payments on behalf of the Water and Sewer Commission so that the bonds don't default to the investors. Well, they do that for a premium. So we're including in our analysis a premium cost for this bond insurance, but the benefit is a lower interest rate because you have a highly rated organization that is guaranteeing these payments won't default. So there's a mathematical equation that we run, our analysis, I should say, that we look at to say, well, is the premium worth it? And it is. It saves a couple $100,000 net to the city. So it's a good thing to do. That's why we're pursuing it. And it might cause the schedule to slip just a bit, but we just have to go through those hoops. And when we've done city general obligation bonds in the past, with the city's high AA rating, we haven't needed the bond insurance, so it just hasn't been something we've had to do before. Mark Franklin and Dinsmore, they had the idea. Was one thing we shared when we met with the Water and Sewer Commission was the idea was, well, if the Water and Sewer Commission doesn't have any existing debt outstanding, which it doesn't right now in revenue debt, it of course has obligations to the city through the general obligation that has already been issued. Mark's idea was to let's start from scratch with an ordinance and put in as liberal terms as we possibly can. It gives the city Water Sewer Commission the most flexibility in the future to issue debt. So he's got those provisions in there. And so part of the dance, if you will, is us vetting with rating agencies and the bond insurers that everything's copacetic there. So.
One of the things, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I heard Mark say that basically we may have to put in automatic rate increases into the language so that it guarantees the investors a certain amount of profit margin. Is that what he said, or
It doesn't guarantee the investors a profit margin. The investors are just going to get back their interest payments due to them. But in order to get the ratings that are needed to get to borrow money, the low interest rates, there's going to be provisions in there to make sure that there are adequate rates levied that are sufficient to cover debt service a certain amount.
Well,
But it's the city's, the city owns the Water and Sewer Commission, it's the city's money, and it always will be. It's not investors.
Got a
That's the
question.
key distinction.
How do the mandates that are in the ordinance that's being put together still, how do those compare with our current practices? Are we in compliance right now?
Oh, yeah.
And how much wiggle room is there between our current practice and the standards that will be written in?
I think you're asking in terms of financially, how is this Water and Sewer Commission doing compared to what requirements we're putting into the ordinance? And the ordinance is a very low hurdle. And they're minimum requirements that's typical for the marketplace. So,
It's not gonna like double the amount of reserves that we need in our water and sewer.
the city Water and Sewer Commission is already exceeding the norms specified in the ordinance that's going to have these financial covenants. But they're ordinary financial covenants. We couldn't get an investment grade rating on the bonds if we didn't have these ordinary covenants in there. It's just that the city's enjoyed the benefit of letting the Water and Sewer Commission has enjoyed the benefit of the city always issuing its debt before and not having required it.
Can I ask, I want to re-ask Commissioner Val's question a different way. So Mark had mentioned that the ratio is likely to be 1.2. Have we tested where we're at today, assuming that we have this bond issue, on what our ratio is currently?
Yeah.
How far ahead of 1.2 are we exceeding?
You're exceeding it handily, yes. I haven't, let me look in here if I have it written down, because that's part of the, let's see. See, the geo debt that you have, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the geo debt that's outstanding isn't factored into this coverage ratio, right, Mark?
Mark?
I believe that's correct, yeah. It's not treated as debt, we treat it as a subordinate payment obligation within the basic bond ordinance. So it's not treated as debt of the system.
I'm just kind of looking to see if I have it in here, the analysis that we ran beforehand.
And I think the gist of both Commissioner Pruitt's and Commissioner Val's question is, I don't think as a commission, we necessarily want to give up the right to control our own rates and be told when we have to, increase rates. And so I think it would go a lot to what we're asking, to know what the difference is there, just so that we know that we can continue to adjust rates as we see fit, other than, be bound by a certain law.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. It's part of the reason I want to be here in person and we wanted to talk through this ahead of time instead of coming at you with an ordinance, you need to approve this, the any questions. So, I mean, I think it'd be an easy follow-up to tell you where we are today, and then after the issuance of the debt, what the coverage looks like. That would be a good way to go about it. You know, I want you to know comfortably that the bar is low for that coverage test, and you're comfortably above it. So I want you all to expect that I'm going to come at first available reading and say, here's the numbers, and you know, can you see the comfort here? That's kind of how I'm going to approach it with you all.
I would say, if I could interject, I mean, the coverage requirement's not intended to force people, you know, organizations like the water system to earn a profit or to make extra money. It's designed to ensure they maintain a minimum amount of security so that they don't run out of money to pay their expenses and debt service. So it's a minimum standard, and it really reflects kind of a minimum level of good management practice. So it's really a, you know, kind of not a race to the bottom, but they just want to ensure that the system is being operated with a minimum or, you know, amount of competency, really. So we're not trying to add a burden or any level of covenant that would force the city to do anything it would not do other than through just basic good management practice. So that's the intent. And that's, you know, and we're also not asking you to do anything that any water or sewer district or other city within the state has not been asked to do. In fact, we're trying to get to levels that are below what a lot of other cities and water districts actually have to maintain. So we're being pretty aggressive on that front.
Just to kind of put it in big picture context, and like I said, when I come back, I'll have real numbers for you to look at, but the net income in the water and sewers, you know, $5.5 million, you got depreciation, you add back, that puts you at $8 million. The debt service on this debt's $1 million, so 8-to-1 coverage or 7-to-1 coverage, whatever it is, we're talking 1.2. And most water and sewer systems that you have out there are going to be, they're doing well when they're at 1.5, 2 times coverage. And you're at a very high level because a lot of your existing debt that the Water and Sewer Commission does have happens to be city's debt. It's not factored into this. So you're where you need to be, you know, and I think it's a good question, and I'll come back and show you it's the right question, you know, to ask.
Thank you. So we're not getting ourselves into a situation where we sign up to go a route we've never gone before and it leads to immediate rate increases.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. I would not be welcome back here if I was. So, yeah.
Any other questions?
No, you stole mine.
I think we all had the same
Same
thought.
thing.
Yeah, that
Where we
was-
stand.
Yeah,
It looks like our first reading will probably be we are canceling the first meeting in October because of fall break. So we will have a work session on the 17th, and it looks like we'll have a special call meeting at the beginning of that work session to do the first reviews for everything.
Good deal. Do you have any more questions for us?
No, thanks.
Well, thank you all so much for presenting to us. I think we have a much clearer picture of what we're looking at, and I think it's worth bringing back up for discussion in a first read in October. So,
Appreciate it. Thank you all.
thank you.
Thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
thank you.
All right, next up, we have a few special guests in the audience that I wanted to recognize and ask to come up to the front. We have the Executive Director for Kentucky League of Cities, and we also have the Kentucky League of Cities Director of Public Affairs with us. And we have our State Representative Jonathan Dixon with us. And I believe that Mr. Cheney would like to make a presentation on behalf of KLC.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the Board of Commissioners, and esteemed staff as well. I appreciate being able to be here. I've been to about 80 cities since January, but I've only been to two legislative body meetings, and both of them have been right here in the city of Henderson. So we got the whole state with 415 cities, and the only meetings I've been to have been in Henderson. So I really do appreciate being here. I think I'm going to see you again on Friday as well. I have to come back to the occupational license tax Administrators Conference up here on Friday. But the reason we asked to be on the agenda, and you all graciously allowed us to do so, is to present your state representative, Jonathan Dixon, with a plaque, an award for being a friend of city during the last legislative session. You know, the League of Cities, we do not have PACs and give money. We do not do report cards. For legislators, pretty much the only thing we have to do is hope that there are legislators out there that embrace the idea of good government. And Representative Dixon did that and truly believes that local decisions are best made at the local level. He agreed, after going through with a fine-tooth comb a draft of legislation to modernize some of our procurement laws, and carried House Bill 393, provided some changes there to both the local government model procurement code, which governs your all's purchasing process, but also acknowledges community relationships with nonprofits and others that are in the work of rehabilitation and helping advance civic interest in the city as part of that procurement process. So he carried that bill. He made some changes to it. He's not a pushover by any means, but he is always willing to support city governments. This is the second year in a row he's carried a KLC bill for us, and we really appreciate that. So our board of directors has voted to give him a 2023 Friend of Cities Award, and we wanted to do it here in his home jurisdiction. So join me in congratulating him for a 2023 Friend of Cities Award.
Say a few words.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you. And like JD said, this bill gave some great opportunities for cities to spread their wings when it comes to nonprofits, be able to procure things a little differently than we had in the past. And then, of course, the aspect of being able to get rid of some surplus property that you guys have without some hurdles that are in the way. So I saw fit that it was a great bill. Glad that he gave me the opportunity to run it for KLC, and glad that we got it all the way across the finish line. You guys can utilize it here locally, so thank you.
Representative, I just wanted to say congratulations on behalf of the city, and we certainly appreciate your continued partnership.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mayor, can we do, I don't know what protocol is, can we do a photograph
Absolutely, that'd be great.
with the, up there?
Sure.
I don't want to disrupt your all's normal protocol.
Congratulations.
There we go.
Are you leaning out?
Oh.
One, two, three. Gotcha.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity, sir.
Thanks,
Good to
Brad.
see you, JD.
Great to see y'all. See you Friday.
Yes, sir, brother.
All right, looks like next up on the agenda, we have a consent agenda. Yes.
Consent agenda consists of August 22nd, 2023 minutes, regular meeting. Resolution number 5023, resolution authorizing mayor to execute consent for the closure of unimproved right-of-way running between 4th Street and 5th Street. Municipal order number 44-23, municipal order authorizing submittal of a fiscal year 2024 personal protective equipment PPE grant application to the Kentucky Fire Commission for the purchase of structural firefighting protective equipment, accepting grant if awarded, and authorizing the city to execute all necessary documents. Municipal order number 45-23, municipal order authorizing submittal of a fiscal year 2024 thermal imaging camera, TIC, grant application to the Kentucky Fire Commission for the award of a thermal imaging camera, accepting grant if awarded, and authorizing the city to execute all necessary documents.
You did a fantastic job doing that. That was great. Do we have any items on the consent agenda that we need pulled for further discussion? Hearing none, I'll hear a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
That's a first for Commissioner Thomas. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Pruitt. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles.
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas.
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. Next up, we have a second reading for an ordinance amending some job classifications.
Ordinance number 19-23, ordinance amending job classifications and pay plan. Ordinance amending job classifications and pay plan for certain non-hazardous duty positions and police hazardous duty positions.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions, comments, or suggestions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles.
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas.
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. Next up, we have a second reading for an ordinance amending budgeted positions of the fiscal year 24 budget.
Ordinance number 20-23, ordinance amending portion of City of Henderson budget. Ordinance amending City of Henderson budgeted positions and job classifications of the 2023 through 2024 budget for certain non-hazardous positions in the Parks and Recreation and Gas Departments.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
First from Commissioner Bowles, second Commissioner Pruitt. Any concerns, questions, suggestions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. Next up, we have a second reading for an ordinance providing for ad valorem taxes.
Ordinance number 21-23, ordinance providing for the levy and collection of ad valorem taxes. An ordinance of the City of Henderson, Kentucky, providing for the levy and collection of ad valorem taxes for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023, and providing for the time of payment for such taxes, penalty, interest, and discount.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I will remind everyone that this particular ordinance included leaving the same our motor vehicle tax, which we're not allowed to touch, leaving the same our real property tax, and a cut in tangible property tax of a little bit over 10%. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas.
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. Moving on to first readings. We have a first reading for an ordinance closing unimproved right-of-way.
Ordinance number 22-23, ordinance closing public right-of-way running between 4th Street and 5th Street. An ordinance closing unimproved public right-of-way which is approximately 15 feet wide by 417.42 feet long, located in the City of Henderson and running between 4th Street and 5th Street.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas.
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. Next up, we have a first reading for a zoning ordinance amendment.
Ordinance number 23-23, ordinance amending Appendix A zoning. Ordinance amending Article 2 definitions, Section 2.01 definitions, and Article 21H-C Highway Commercial District, Section 21.03 conditional uses of Appendix A zoning of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Henderson to define and permit gaming facilities as a conditional use in the Highway Commercial District.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Reminder on this particular ordinance, this is one that we sent down to the Planning Commission for discussion, and they have sent it back up to us with no additional amendments. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas.
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. Next up, we have an ordinance accepting public utility improvements.
Ordinance number 24-23, ordinance accepting public improvements. Ordinance accepting public utility improvements, sanitary sewer, potable water, and stormwater system on property located in Canoe Creek Subdivision 2, Section 3 in the City of Henderson.
Do we have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second, Commissioner Pruitt. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas.
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. Next up, we do have a municipal order. Before we read it, though, I'd like to invite our project manager, Dylan Ward, up to the podium, please. Dylan, do you want to explain to us where we're at on the sports complex, please?
Yeah, I can certainly do that. So as y'all recall, at the last meeting, I passed out this sheet with the list of kind of where we stood, the total of 18.5 million. And so more or less what we've done is we've brought back some of those items that are ready for formal approval to your all's attention. So you'll see in the agenda, I had the first 3 items highlighted. So basically tonight, what we're asking for your all's approval on are PR 1, 2, 7, and 3, which are upgrading the block dugouts or upgrading the fence dugouts to block, adding a little band of decorative brick around the dugouts as well as the concession stand, just to kind of make the whole thing a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. The bulk of it is the 2.5, which is the artificial turf for the 4 infields, the 4 outfields, and the 1 multi-purpose field. And then we also included the third option on the paper there, which was actually a credit for changing some of the sanitary pipes. So the pricing, this is the exact same spreadsheet that I presented last time. Some of these other numbers will change slightly, but these are 3 that are, basically we have final proposals from the contractor, and the others we're continuing to fine-tune pricing. So.
Any questions for Dylan? Just to update the commission, Dylan and I also went to the fiscal court this morning and made a request that they purchase the lighting for the facility, $1.25 million. They are going to have a work session later on and have that as a discussion item and are considering it, and we will know their determination within a few weeks. So if we could, can you please read the municipal order approving sports complex change orders?
Municipal order number 46-23. Municipal order approving change order proposal requests, PR number 1, PR number 2/PR number 7, and PR number 3 to the construction agreement with ARC Construction Company Incorporated of Evansville, Indiana, for construction of the Henderson Sports Complex on Airline Road in an amount of $2,569,202.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any further discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt,
Aye.
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas.
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye. Thank you, Dylan. Next up, we have city manager's report.
Okay, before we get started, I would ask that Police Chief McKinney bring his new deputy police chief to the podium and make an introduction, please.
Yes, Commissioner, it pleasures me to be here today to introduce to you Robert Bob Schultz. Tell you a little bit about Bob. First off, we had a very stringent assessment center in choosing our deputy chief. Bob excelled in all areas of that and came out number 1 on our list. About Bob himself, he's got over 30 years of experience. He started his law enforcement career in 1993 at the City of Henderson Police Department. He worked there for 5 years before applying with the Kentucky State Police. After going to the Kentucky State Police, he was a trooper, sergeant, captain, lieutenant, and eventually made his way to the rank of major over the West Troop, which means he was over all of the 8 posts in Western Kentucky. So that was one of his later assignments. He retired from the Kentucky State Police in 2018, went to work for the Henderson County Sheriff's Department, where he was a school resource officer up until recently, till we have brought him on board. And I've known Bob and worked around him or with him for over 20 years. And I'm very confident and have no doubts that he can help us move forward at the police department and make us just a better agency in our unwavering dedication to be one of the best agencies in the state. So anyway, this is Bob Schultz. I'm glad to have him here and on board with us. So,
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Congratulations.
all
very
right.
much.
Thank you.
Bob, do you have anything you would like to say?
Certainly. 30 years ago at this time, I just completed the training program and was working on my own for the city police. That's where I got my start. Those 5 years I enjoyed very much.
As Chief McKinney said, I went on to state police in various assignments across the Commonwealth, and now I've come right back to the beginning, so I couldn't be more pleased to be back with the Henderson City Police Department. And after all the years I've worked with the chief, I think we're going to be doing some really great things. So I appreciate working with you all, and I really greatly appreciate the welcome I've received from everybody. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is, we have a couple rezones that is typical that we bring before you. As y'all understand that we had that 21-day rule. But the first item is at 109 Second Street with the narrative development plan. If you have any questions with regard to that project, just feel free to get with me. And then the other one is rezoning for the Boys and Girls Club on North Elm Street. And Dawn, it went from,
R2 became all business.
yeah. So realize that that building had been there probably since World War II. Probably we had no zoning at that time, but it got grouped in with a residential neighborhood. So now, to make it more appropriate, that it's going to be rezoned, as Dawn indicated. So if you have any questions, feel free to call. Next on the list, I would ask that Brian Williams and David Steele come to the podium to give a brief update on our sanitation program that we've recently rolled out. And then I will ask Brian to speak to our bids that we received on our recycling curbside program. So David, if you don't care, go first.
Overall, I think it's gone pretty smooth. We have had some complaints and things we've had to work through along the way. We've put out 450 second cans for people that have requested a second can, which is quite a bit lower than most other cities told us. They told us it would be close to a third of your residents. Now, they're still coming in. We did find 85 accounts that were not even being charged sanitation that were being picked up, some dating back as far as 2011. That it's kind of been a good audit for us, honestly, to see where we were at, that things that had been missed in the past. We have about 21 people that are on the list for the smaller 31 or 35-gallon cans that have been requested. Those have been ordered. We've ordered 200 of those and 400 additional recycle cans. But overall, I mean, we've had some complaints. We've had some people that didn't quite get the message on what was going on completely, and we've been working through that. But most everybody I've been able to talk to, we've been able to ease their concerns or do what we need to do to get them taken care of.
Give them a new truck too.
Yes, we have been. We have a new automated truck that's been able to, I've been running myself to help the guys out as they've been shorthanded and things like that. And so we've been able to use that in several neighborhoods, and it's helped them quite a bit on what they're having to get themselves, because we normally try to run 5 trucks, and we've been down to 4 pretty much ever since we rolled out this new system, just being short on staff. But we're getting back there and are able to run our 5 trucks again, but it's still to be able to help out.
I want to thank you for the calls I got that I call you, that you took care of it. You've done a great job with this rollout. I thought it'd be a little bit more complicated, and people would, but they're adapting very well, especially in my neighborhood. They're adapting.
And from what I've seen, just being out there, it's a lot cleaner look.
Yes,
it really is.
It's a lot more uniform look. It's just trying to get everybody completely on board, but for the most part, most all the neighborhoods I go in, you've got a few that are still kind of figuring it out, but for the most part, everybody's doing a pretty good job with it.
Plus, we still have the manpower going through, like I was concerned about, making sure that that's another set of eyes going through the back alleys, and that's still taking place.
Yep.
So I'm happy about that.
Everything's still the same as far as where the trash is placed. It's just a different method of pickup that's safer on our guys, and I will say that they've expressed how much better it is on their bodies and everything when they get done, especially in the 90s, things like that outside, when it's hard for them to keep going, even make it through the day. Little longer day the way they're doing it, but it's a lot easier on their bodies.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be a lot cleaner, because, you know, the other way the animals were getting in,
Right.
dogs and stuff, knocking over. It's a little hard to knock over those.
They are. They're a little better.
That's
I
right.
honestly had more specs on those trash cans than what I would do on a garbage truck. There was that much involved in it. So
Harder to overfill them too.
Yeah.
Well, and the codes they're involved with trying to help fix some of the issues too, so that will help as well. But I want to tag on you, David's done a good job in the beginning. He was an unbelievable amount of calls that he was taking every day. You know, he was out in the truck, and then when he came in, he made phone call returns through the day and into the evening until a certain point, you know, just to try to catch up each day. So he needs to be commended for that. He's done a really good job.
David, how many guys are we still short?
Actually, we
Depends on the
just.
day of the week.
Yeah. Just about every time we get back to full staff, it seems like a week or so later, there's changes that roll out. That's kind of where we were at with this and why this all came about in the first place. But as of right now, with my 2 temporaries, I believe I'm right at full staffed, so we're getting right there. As long as they stay and everything keeps rolling, we're good to go.
Anybody have any questions on the trash pickup?
No, I just want to commend
Well
you
done,
guys. It went smoother than I even could have dreamed about it.
Well,
It did go pretty smooth.
But I guess you read the Sunday paper and the article in there, so you're always going to have issues with trash complaints. That's been going on for 100 years, so it's not going to change. It doesn't matter how you do it, you're going to have issues.
Did the best I think we could do under the circumstances. Changing, it's the first time we did this. It was going pretty smooth, I thought. You're going to have some stuff that's going to happen on any rollout of this magnitude.
Right.
But David, you did a great job.
Thank you, sir.
And I want to just touch base with you for a few minutes on the recycling program. Whether you knew it or not, our recycling bid, our contract ends at the end of this month. So we put out bids to renew the recycling contracts. So we did that. We got our bids back. We had one vendor from each, one for the recycling pickup and one for the sorting where we take our material. And they were the 2 current vendors that we use. So in the sorting, the bid went up 33% from what we're currently paying on that one. The pickup went up 71%. Since there were just one bid in each, I reached out to both vendors to try to negotiate, see if they would be willing to meet us halfway or whatever, but they were set in stone where they needed to be. They said that, that's basically they were losing money being over here the last 2 or 3 years anyway. So anyway, we're just kind of at a rough guesstimate. It's going to, being our prices have increased, a best guesstimate is going to cost us somewhere around $140,000 more this coming year with this new price than what we're currently paying. Just so you're kind of aware of that, which we are, getting a lot more calls for recycled containers now. So there's going to be more out. So that's, we just don't really know where this is going to go for sure. But my question then to you, knowing that, and I'm sure you want to continue with the recycling, is it your wish to move forward? And the next meeting, I'll present my recommendation to approve the bids, and we'll move on with our next contract.
Have you looked this far ahead of how much that's going to cost the citizens on the charge?
Well, right now, it's not going to cost any more than it already is. Now, it will take away from some of our profit as far as our rate increases that we did, we voted on earlier in the year. So we won't have that profit margin like we were. So that may be an issue as far as the next truck that we buy or whatever. So we'll have to look at that as we go forward in the next year or two as well. So, but I mean, we can move forward because it's a 5-year contract with 2 years with 3 additional 1 years if everybody's in agreement. So there's some negotiating there that could be done at that point. So
How much recycling, how many tons do we do a year, ballpark?
well, it's since people have quit putting glass in it, and that was the biggest tonnage. We've kind of gone over the last few years. We've gone from ranging in the 40 plus tons a month to in the kind of the low to mid 30s tons a month. So the tonnage has kind of gone down, but that doesn't necessarily mean the volume is gone. It's just some of the weight. So
I'm just getting at if those tons switched over to our sanitation, what's that cost?
well, that's would be the going rate that we pay Davis County. Now, it's $32 a ton is what we pay to have our tons hauled from that. So
Well, we're better off biting the bullet. Taking 140,000
I mean,
and keeping the recycling.
it's a good program. I think, the people are looking for, instead of wanting to pay for a second trash can, they'll get the recycle can to offset some of their trash, and then they try to use the one can like that. So I'm sure that's part of it. And some of these cans that we put out that weren't being used so often, I think they're showing up on the streets now. So they pulled them out and they're using some of these cans now. So over the next, over the next several months, we'll be able to see what kind of numbers that they're actually picking up each month, so. And I'm sure it's gonna go
It's
up.
a good point, there's some cost saved by not sending more to landfill, but probably a little bit more expensive to recycle still, but we don't recycle necessarily because we're trying to save money, we're recycling for a different reason altogether.
Right.
And that's what I think our citizens want.
Yeah.
Definitely what I want, so I'd certainly support.
Yeah, I think it's a good
continuing the
program. Sure. But I think it also highlights, we talked about early on, the need to try to keep it for trash pickup within the city. So we weren't at the,
That's what I was
expense
just-
of a big increase from private sector. So
We
I think,
talked
that
about
kind of really highlights what you did early on and the kind of enormous amount of money you saved us. You all saved us in the process.
Well, that's what I want to bring up is because this being a contractor, this went up way more than what we could have ever expected. And the projections that we were given for the privatization of sanitation were based on the mean or whatever, I forget the name or the three-letter organization that it goes with. But to see this kind of increase on recycling, if that had happened to us on sanitation as well, I think we were by far better off doing the way we did, keep it in-house.
Good deal. And just to add a little bit to your question from earlier, Commissioner Pruitt, when we're talking about percentages and dollar amounts, they sound a lot larger than what a monthly fee adjustment would be. And so if you took 140,000 and you divided it by 10,000 and divided by 12, you get about $1.15 a month. And so I don't think they're going to come back and recommend that we raise those rates by $1.15. At least that's not what it sounds like. But if we were going to break even with where we are right now and consider this adjustment, it would be $1.15 extra for the recycling program at those new levels. So
I will prepare a memo and get it to you for the next meeting.
good deal. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
And David, I didn't get a chance to say, but I certainly echo what everybody else said. I appreciate. I don't think people really appreciate the hundreds of calls that you received, especially that first week, and then that's tapered off to maybe a dozen calls a day instead of the hundreds. But it really has been nice having you there to explain what's going on. I've gotten a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, a lot of complaints, but the people that have talked to you with their complaints, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback about the way that you're treating the public and our citizens. And I just want to say thank you for dealing with this difficult situation with the way that you have. It's been important. So.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You represent us very well.
Thank you, sir.
Next, I would ask Chief Dixon and Assistant Chief Mangarella to come to the podium to talk about a fire truck.
So as y'all know, we're in the process of trying to purchase a new fire pumper. The bid process has ended, and we felt the need, talking with the city manager and the circumstances that happened last time with when we bought Engine 4 and that pumper where we were held to a surcharge at such a high cost. We wanted to make sure you all know how cautiously we've been going through this and where we were leaning on that recommendation. And again, I brought Assistant Chief Mangarella with me. He's our head of our chairman of that committee, and I'd like him to speak on where we're at on that process for you all.
Thank you. We received 7 bids from 3 different vendors, and I can tell you that Seagrave did submit the best bid. It most closely meets our specification, but at almost $950,000 and a 1,000-day delivery, and not for getting the surcharge. Ethically and fiscally, I'm going to recommend that we go ahead and disqualify them from the process. Despite the fact that they are the best or the most closely suited to the specification, we do have other options. And I will add that those surcharges do continue. Right over across the river in Indiana, they've just imposed $210,000 worth of surcharges to another fire department. So it's hard to say if we would have to be going through that again, but I would venture to say that it would have been quite possible. Next was Ferrera Fire Apparatus. We have 2 Ferreras right now. We have engine 3 and ladder 1. They also did submit a pretty good specification or a pretty good bid, but we pulled 5 years worth of service records on what it cost us to maintain engine 3 and ladder 1, and we're right at $100,000. So for that reason, once again, if it was one truck, it'd be a little bit easier to maybe consider or find out what the problem was. But I think there's enough of a pattern there to go ahead and recommend and disqualify them as well. So that brings me to Pierce Manufacturing. We have engine 2 right now, which is a Pierce. They submitted a build to order, and then they also submitted 4 other stock trucks. Every one of these vendors was instructed that they could submit as many bids as they wanted. They were not limited to one. So everybody sent a build to order, and then on top of that, Pierce sent 4 stock trucks, basically the foundation. Here it is on wheels, chassis wheels, change it as you need to. So my recommendation after looking at all of them, there's one enforcer on this list across all of them. The thing about the enforcer is the chassis frame rails are over 3 inches larger in diameter. What that says for me is 20 plus years of service out of that fire truck. It's going to take more of a beating. We have one rescue truck in the city, but our engines also, they operate as rescue pumpers. We overload them with equipment. They carry more than they should. They're heavier. So a bigger frame rail is definitely going to be beneficial to us. The downside to this is it's a 930-day delivery. That's not what we wanted to hear. There are quicker options, but all the quicker options are the bottom of the line, bare bones. It's called the Sabre chassis. So they're 10-inch frame rails. It's manufactured outside of the normal Pierce manufacturing plant. It's a sub-plant down in Florida. Still a good quality. Pierce still puts their name on it, but it's certainly for longevity purposes not what I would recommend that we put on the road for the next 20 years. This truck will be making every fire. It'll be at engine 2 or at station 2. It's going to be pretty busy, and we're going to be putting it to work. So having said that, I went through and I compared my build to order list with what comes on this truck, what can we eliminate, and what do we need to replace it with. So I was able to eliminate or prepare to replace $38,154 of equipment that's on this stock truck that doesn't need to be there, and we need to replace it with similar items. So what I need to replace it with is $40,826. So it's a difference of $2,672. So the purchase price of that truck is $828,343. So significantly lower than what the Seagrave is. Again, this is my recommendation. And then the one thing that I would recommend or request of you all moving forward is it's basically impossible to go to a pre-construction conference with a book it covers it all. There's new ways to wire things. There's new material that comes out. Other departments put things on there that are, afterthoughts that were never thought of. So I've gone through this several times. I also plan to meet with the truck committee. It's a solid truck, but I will ask you to consider a not to exceed limit of $10,000. My goal would be to come back to you and say, I didn't spend it all. I would love to, and I actually think that I can do that. But that would cover a few of the main additional changes that I see would we potentially have to make on this, like a cover on the front bumper, which isn't on here. That gives us more ability to add not just hoses, but things that need to be protected from the elements, because over 20 years, there's no telling what this truck is going to need to do for us. So that'll give us a little bit more interoperability and more configuration changes on the fly.
Any questions or?
What was, how long for delivery?
It's 930 days.
It's, yeah, and they're all, like you said, there's a few demos that just don't fit our need, but if you look across the board, they're all almost 900 days.
I just want to say thank you for taking our comments to, and taking your personal experience with the previous vendor to heart. Sure. Because the one thing that, 930 days is bad enough.
It is.
But on day 700, if that company sends us a letter that says, hey, if you still want us to build your truck, we need $100,000 more.
Right.
That's not something we want to get into. And so whatever we do with our contract that we sign with them, I want us to pay extra attention to making sure that we do not allow ourselves to get into that same position again with the wording of the contract.
Yeah, I appreciate transparency too.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it very much.
And we just found out about a neighboring department we talked to. I talked to their chief yesterday. I knew they had purchased two of the pumper that we purchased before, and they said the surcharge was held on to them for $210,000. I was like,
Yeah.
so we just, we wanted to share all that information with you all.
Thank you.
For information, the truck that we had, that was totaled in a car, fire truck wreck, what brand was it?
That was a Sutphen.
What?
Sutphen.
Okay. And it had a lightweight frame?
Yes.
Yes.
If y'all remember, it suffered I'd call a low impact wreck, but it
Totaled it out.
car hit it at the right place and hit the frame on the truck.
Yeah, there were front
Y'all
rails that were
remember we
cracked.
had an insurance settlement on it.
Right.
Any other questions or comments from the commission?
No.
Buzzy, you have anything else for them?
Nick, just want to say, not that we didn't think of all of you yesterday up at 9/11, but if y'all don't know, Nick was working in New Jersey when 9/11 happened and actually responded to New York City. And our thoughts go out to you every year that goes by that you have to remember that event.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. There's really no amount of words that we have that can express our gratitude to all of our emergency services people that help keep our city safe and in good condition. We certainly do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last item, a committee of Robert Gunner, Connie Galloway, Carla Beggar, Dylan, and myself have been interviewing candidates for the replacement of our finance director. Boo. We have narrowed the candidate pool down. We've interviewed between last week and this week. And what I would like to bring back to the Board of Commissioners and offer, if there's desire on the board's behalf to appoint someone to sit in possibly on a second interview, to be able to be available to ask any questions on behalf of the board for that process. I would consider that y'all participated in police and fire interviews. I would probably place this position near the top of being one of the most important positions within the city. So I extend that offer for consideration.
Well, and I'll tell you, I've been working in finance for 16 years, excuse me. And would be happy to sit in on that committee or on the interviews if it pleases the commission. This would be one I would be happy
Perfect for
to
me,
sit in
'cause
on if that's okay with you guys.
That's not my cup of tea. Yep.
It is, you're right, and if anybody's out there and they're watching this meeting in public for the first time, I just want to clarify that Buzzy was booing the fact
Yeah.
that we have to replace our finance director and not booing the finance director. We've got an excellent finance director who's done such a good job for us over the years, and it's, I know, troubling for all of us that we're going to have a day where you're not going to be here with us anymore, so.
Well, today's a prime example when we talk about revenue bonds and general obligation bonds, where our finance director is key to helping this board make those critical decisions on what we can afford and what we can't afford. So, as y'all are aware, y'all approved in the budget to bring in a successor for Robert 6 months prior to his retirement. So we're about at that point now to finalize this process. And we can look forward to making that decision probably by the end of September.
Is that all of the city manager report?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we do have need for executive session, but I always like to get this part out of the way first. Commissioner comments. Commissioner Pruitt, do you have anything for us today? Commissioner Witt?
Nothing today.
Commissioner Bowles? Commissioner Thomas?
Nothing today.
And I would just remind the commission that tomorrow we have a grad luncheon. If you all have signed up or would like to attend, I'll be sending out a little bit more information as far as the address and time later on today, just to remind you. And outside of that, we have need for executive session.
I move that the commission go into executive session for the purpose of discussion of proposed litigation against the city of Henderson and Henderson Municipal Power and Light pursuant to KRS 61.810, paragraph 1, subsection C.
Do we have a second?
Actually,
What?
Do we need to have him reread it and replace the word?
Existing litigation.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? We have a second from Commissioner Bowles. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pruitt.
Aye.
Commissioner Witt.
Aye.
Commissioner Bowles. Commissioner Thomas.
Aye.
Mayor State.
Aye, and we will have our executive session in this room, so if you're not part of that,